No, I don't think it was warranted at all. But we all know Andy's history, especially in this town. So people want to jump on him. But I mean, if you can't give the ball to your best player, try to break one off. That's his. You're basically playing for overtime at that point. So
yeah, a lot of people thought they should have taken a knee and gone to overtime. But look, if you break one with Charles, you get yourself a field goal position with 36 seconds left.
Yeah, exactly. And we're talking about an all-pro player. We're not talking about a nobody. If you can't trust your best player, you're in trouble. And that's, unfortunately it didn't work out. And sometimes things happen like that. It's a tough loss. Basically 2 touchdowns in 10 seconds. You go from a touchdown lead to a touchdown down and you lose. So it's obviously very difficult for them to take in the short term, but in the long term, I think there's some positive. I think they clearly look like the better team, and that's moving forward. That's something that hasn't happened. Obviously, Denver's won that division 4 consecutive years. I thought Kansas City was the better team. Unfortunately, they came out on the short end.
Yeah, we got some text messages today calling us the jinx for pick to win the West there. But, overall, I think those two teams obviously look pretty close, and I wouldn't be Kansas City went to Denver. I know it's tough to win at Denver, but Kansas City's not an easy place to win either.
No, it isn't, and that's what it makes it so difficult, because you have that game won, and all of a sudden you have the drastic turn at the end. So it is going to be difficult to get over. But I think they have the talent to do it. They certainly, those pass rushers on both sides of the ball, that was the most impressive thing. So, both of those teams have that to rely on, the fact that they can look at that and, Kansas City can say they have Justin Houston and Tom Ali, and on the other side you have Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware. So I think they're both going to ride their defenses. But, sneakily, City's got a lot of skill position talent now that Kelsey's developed and Jeremy Macklin is there, added to Jamal Charles, who, despite last night's game, obviously he's going to be one of the best, 3 or 4 running backs in the league.
Talking with John McMullen. Of course, you can read his Eagles coverage at 97.3 ESPN.com. We're looking at the NFL. You can read his coverage at today's Pigskin.com. Let's take a look at some of the games. I want to get first the Giants and the Falcons. We saw the Falcons we saw the Giants on prime time. The Giants got some news that the NFL botched 2 calls. I'm sure it doesn't make them feel any better. But were you sold enough on Atlanta to think they can travel to New York and pick up their second win?
Yeah, but, I'm only more sold on them in that spot because I don't think that much of the Giants. So, they had a similar loss to Kansas City last night, and the fact that obviously they should have won that game, so it's gonna stick with them for a while. And to me, though, that they're a bad team, and once bad things happen to bad teams, they tend to go downhill. And Tom Coughlin's got to be very wary of that. I'm not sold on Atlanta being a playoff team or being a 10-win team, but they're improved from last year. There's no question about it. And they have certain strengths. We all know what they are. We saw it up close, Julio Jones being number 1. And Dan Quinn's got that defense at least playing respectably. So I certainly think they have a chance. Anytime you look at a home team, obviously has a significant advantage in this league, and the Giants really need this win. So I'd lean slightly in their direction, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Atlanta went up there and won that game.
I think another marquee one, John, is New England and Buffalo. I think everybody wants to see what Buffalo is, and New England obviously hasn't played since Thursday night, so they've been kind of off the radar here. But is this one going to live up to the hype, or do you think that New England's still, way better than Buffalo?
I think they are. I think most of the hype is obviously coming from Buffalo's direction, and the fact that Rex Ryan is the way he is, and he's entertaining, and he's great for people like me that report on the game, and he's going to talk about his hatred for New England. The Patriots have no need to hate Buffalo because, it's like the rivalry between kindling and fire. It's not really a rivalry. I mean, one side dominates. But they're better. There's no question. The Bills are a better team. They have a lot of skill position talent, and if Tyrod Taylor can continue to play at the level he did in Week 1, they're going to be a playoff level team. I don't think they can challenge the Patriots for the AFC East title, but I think they could be in the conversation for a wild card spot.
A lot of fun games this week, including you look at that New England game, and you also go to another fun game, which is Marcus Mariota against Johnny Manziel. Two teams that probably don't have playoff aspirations, except if Tennessee wins this, they would be 2-0. And what is your take on Mariota now going into the second week here? Can he, carry that team to 2-0?
I think he can, and I think he will. It's a great setup for the start of his career. If you think about his first two matchups, the fact that he got to face Tampa Bay in the cover two, which is a really simplistic defense, and obviously that's good for a rookie quarterback. And then, Josh McCown's not been cleared. He's not going to be able to go. Johnny Manziel's going to start. And we've all seen him. We saw him play a little bit last season. Showed slight improvement, basically the first 5 minutes he was in the game against the Jets last week. And then after they kind of figured him out, that was it. He wasn't able to do anything with the football. And I just don't think he's ready to play in this league. So I think it's a great setup for Mariota to go 2-1 early in his career. And then the hype train will really get rolling.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different storylines on top of these games leading into how about Jacksonville with Blake Bortles now? I know, they took him top in the draft, but are they starting to question whether or not he's the guy down there?
Well, they press about that kindergarten quote about ripping the fans, questioning the play calling. But I think, I wrote about that in my national column earlier in the week. I think people who listened to his press conference kind of buried the lead. What he also said, imagine, game planning a game in the NFL as a play caller, and that's not what you want to hear from your quarterback. I mean, if you're a head coach in this league or you're an offensive coordinator, you want a quarterback to be an extension of you on the field. And obviously, the really successful ones, the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, they can basically run an offense from the line of scrimmage. Blake was basically telling people in Jacksonville he wants no part of that. And that's the biggest concern to me.
Let's look at Green Bay and Seattle. I think, on Tuesday, this might be a game we're talking a lot more about, too, when we're live at the Golden Nugget. But, we talked a little bit about Seattle on Tuesday's show. Are they the same defense? And I think we're going to find out what Green Bay is, too. Without Jordy Nelson, can they attack this Green Bay secondary? Is Seattle are they a step below where they were before, or they just have a bad opening week?
I had a bad opening week, and they are a step below. As long as Cam Chancellor isn't out there, that affects them. I mean, he's one of the best strong safeties in football. So, obviously, if they don't have him, they're going to take a little bit of a step back. I still think they're going to be very, very competitive in the long term, even without him. And Green Bay, I speculated at some point Aaron Rodgers was going to make somebody a star. It took him 1 week to make James Jones a star again. That's how good he is. So Green Bay's, you can pick them apart and look at their roster and say there's a lot of holes there. But as long as they got him throwing the football, they're going to be a significant Super Bowl contender.
All right, a lot of great games this weekend, but obviously locally, Philadelphia and Dallas steal the show. And it's an early season matchup. September, I feel like the juice isn't quite there because it's so early in the game here. But how important is this for both these teams? I mean, Dallas gets this win. They're 2-0. Philadelphia might be the next best challenger, would be 0-2. It almost feels like this game could be bigger for Dallas if they can win this, because they would separate themselves from Philly by almost 2.5 games, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that might be to their detriment, believe it or not. I think, it's human nature to go into this situation if you're Dallas and kind of go into and say, we have a little bit of a cushion. And that's what can happen, especially when you talk about the guys who aren't going to be there. First and foremost, Des Bryant, but also obviously the suspended guys, Hardy, McLean, Randy Gregory's not going to play. He's got the ankle injury. Ronald Leary probably not going to play on the offensive line. So they are much more banged up than the Eagles. And, I think as much as you guard against it, it can creep into your mind and say we have a little bit of a cushion early in the season, so it's not the biggest deal in the world if we lose. On the other hand, the Eagles kind of know they're behind the 8 ball if they start 0-2, so they're going to be the dangerous animal backed in the corner.
DeMarco Murray getting ready for his former team, the Dallas Cowboys, and obviously that's one big storyline here. How big of a factor do you think he will be or needs to be in this game for Philadelphia?
Well, he's got to be bigger than he was in Atlanta. There's no question about that. I mean, I don't need to see 150 yards, but I'd like to see 75 at least. If he doesn't crack 10 again, the Eagles are in trouble. I'm not looking for miracles, but you got to have some semblance of a running game. And a big part of that, as Chip has talked about all week, is the fact that you can't get behind early in the game because then you become one-dimensional. So I think it all works in concert. Obviously, the defense can't get beat early, and the Eagles can't be down 14-0. And that offensive line has to get off to a much better start, has to start firing off the ball and give these running backs some holes to run through.
Billy Davis yesterday, John, basically admitted that Maxwell did not play better, said he has full confidence he will play better. You wrote a piece about him and the techniques, and we talked a little bit about him yesterday, but what kind of matchup is without Dez Bryant, what kind of matchup is the wide receiving core for this secondary for Philadelphia?
Well, it's a heck of a lot better. They still have some very good players. Terrence Williams, I think, is underrated. And Cole Beasley's like one of those traditional slot receivers that's just really, really quick in the middle of the field on those option routes and has sure hands and is difficult to deal with. But, he's not a big play threat. And obviously Dez brings that ability to just go get those 50-50 balls down the field. He kind of saw it last year. And you saw it last week against Julio Jones. The Eagles just don't match up well with receivers like that. And whether you want to blame it on terrible technique, which I was shocked at.
And it's a problem they had last year, too. So is that the quarterback or is that the coach?
I think it's a combination. I think, despite what he says, I think Chip Kelly's concerned about Sam Bradford, and he doesn't want him taking those 5-7 stop drops and looking down the field, because that means you're more likely to get hit. And obviously, defensive teams go in knowing Sam Bradford's injury history, and dirty or not, they're going to take some licks if they get an opportunity. We saw it with Terrell Suggs in the preseason. So I think they're trying to protect him by getting the ball out quickly. But at some point, you got to take the training wheels off and stretch the field, because defenses are going to figure that out very quickly if you're never stretching the field, and they're going to start, sitting and jumping on those underneath routes.
Yeah, and it's like we kind of talked a little bit about earlier in the week, that it seemed that Chip Kelly, and a lot of times when we're talking about them losing games, the next day we're talking about how the Eagles seem to react to what the other teams does more so than they dictate the style of play. That's one thing I seem to see as a trend when Philadelphia loses a game.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because if you think about it, obviously probably the best example of the Eagles dictating things was the first game Chip Kelly ever coached. If you think about that first half against the Washington Redskins, I mean, that was dictating to the opposition. The Redskins didn't know what to do. So when they're clicking on all cylinders, that's where the tempo comes in, and that's where the Eagles are dictating everything. But when it's not working and you have those early 3-and-outs, it looks like the exact opposite. So, getting off to a better start is certainly going to be one of the storylines of this game.
D'Amico, I guess you could throw him in there. Kiko Alonso, who I was going to ask, how big of a role is he going to play with Witten? Do you think he's an expanded role this week, with Witten being probably expanding his role as well?
Well, he played a lot in week one, mainly because it was pretty clear D'Amico wasn't 100%. No matter what they're saying, they benched him basically at halftime. So Kiko played a lot, and he made the splash play, and that's what he can do, because for a linebacker, he's so athletic. He's great in pass coverage. My concern was that he did not play well against the run at all. And that could be some rust, and obviously hasn't played for a very, very long time. And hopefully he'll get back into it pretty quickly. But until D'Amico shows some of that explosion he's had in the past, I think it's going to be, Alonzo and Kendricks playing on the inside the vast majority of the time, as in 80 to 85% of the snaps.
John McMullen here on the Sports Bash has his prediction. I heard people already talking about your prediction earlier today. We had people texting and tweeting about it because it seems like a lot of people have had the Eagles winning a more lopsided game than you. So I'll let you tell the people your prediction that you posted at 973ESPN.com.
Yeah, I think Eagles winning the game 27-21. I don't like the way they played in Atlanta. They have a lot of concerns, but I don't like the way Dallas played against the Giants, and they got out of there with a win. So I think both teams improved, and they certainly couldn't have been happy with how they did play in Week 1. And this is a bigger game for the Eagles. It's more dangerous. They're the healthier team, so you have to give them a slight edge. I'm not sure, other than pure hatred of the Cowboys, which I understand people in this market have. I don't see how you could look at this game and expect a 2 or 3 touchdown difference, though.
Yeah, and the one thing that has been disconcerting the last couple of years is that Philadelphia's inability to beat Dallas on their home field. That needs to change if we got to take this team seriously.
Yeah, and there has been a difference. I think there has been, for whatever financial field, has not been the same home field advantage as of the old vet and more of a corporate environment, I guess. They had that long losing streak, back a year and a half ago. They've righted the ship from there, but still it's not consistent. The great teams in this league, tend to be 8-0, 7-1 at home. Have to be if they want to be a truly elite team in the NFC.
All right, John McMullen for 97.3ESPN.com on this game. Obviously, you can hear it right here on 97.3 ESPN, your home for Eagles football. The coverage starts at 3. The kickoff at 4:25. John has Eagles 27-21 over the Dallas Cowboys. All right, man, enjoy the game.
You too, Mike. Thanks.